Show up to Thanksgiving with a shaved head and see what happens.
Oh, I did not know it was Silly Goose o'clock, Aunt Helen. I hope you, Aunt Helen, get everything you voted for.
Thanksgiving is upon us, and some TikTok influencers are not coping well with the holiday season. We're going to break this down and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we cover all the craziest things from across the internet, the media, and our politics, all from an independent perspective. Heads up, there won't be any show tomorrow, Thursday, as I'll be off celebrating Thanksgiving and eating way too much pie. But I'll be back Friday with a really interesting viral video Friday, and then of course, next week, back to our scheduled programming. For our main segment today, we're going to take a look at some TikTokers losing it over the holiday season and Thanksgiving in particular. Up first, this interesting TikTok influencer who's also a hairdresser apparently has a novel idea about how to troll your father on Thanksgiving dinner.
So you want to get back at your dad for voting for Donald Trump, do you, pumpkin?
No. Wanting revenge on family members because they vote differently than you? Yeah, that's not a normal feeling to have.
I have a great idea. Show up to Thanksgiving with a shaved head and see what happens.
Not the creepy smile. I mean, people might be surprised, but ultimately you're affecting yourself, and that's going to take a real long time to grow back, and you're probably not going to be very happy with the way that you look. So the biggest loser there is just going to be you, not your Trump-supporting family. Like, I'm pretty sure they'll just go about their business and help themselves to some extra stuffing.
You get extra points if you consider yourself a daughter of an American dad. Ooh, that would light his ass up, wouldn't it, babe? Because American dads have never really been given the room to adequately express themselves, it makes them real mad when you do for yourself. Even grumpier when you do things that are outside of what is acceptable to do with your appearance, like shaving your head. Other dad mad options would include getting a tattoo on your face or your neck or even your hands, maybe.
Okay, now this is truly terrible advice because your hair will grow back, but you really can't undo a face tattoo. At least it's extraordinarily difficult and painful and expensive to even attempt to get that removed. So to make a decision like that, which personally I don't think looks great, but to each their own. If you like that, I mean, by all means, it's your body, but don't make that decision to spite someone else in the moment when your fifis are upset over an election result. That's unhinged, and it's absolutely terrible advice from an influencer, especially one who is a hairstylist and a cosmetologist or whatever, and is supposed to actually give people good advice about their appearance. Instead, we're getting whatever this unhinged nonsense is.
Ooh, or a facial piercing. That'll really set him off.
That sounds painful. And again, it's not healthy to be so obsessed with wanting to upset your loved ones or troll them as a full-grown adult. It's giving 15-year-old teenage angst, not mature adult who can handle disagreement.
I love doing shit like that so much. I even want to help you on your dad mad journey, cutie. If you're in my area between now and the first of the year and you would like to shave your head before you go home for the holidays, I'll do it for you for free. I think this is your sign to be unapologetically you this holiday season, pumpkin. Let me know if I can help. See you then.
Anyone else kind of have the heebie-jeebies from this? But yeah, sorry, this isn't normal, this isn't healthy, and you shouldn't want to be encouraging people to antagonize their family members and start strife over the holiday season. That's demented. But that makes it, sadly, par for the course for some of these Thanksgiving TikToks that we're going to continue to run through today. The next one is actually frightening after a quick message from today's sponsor.
Today I'm going to show you how to use pumpkin spice pronouns and sentences, so let's go. I can realize it. That's better.
Sometimes I feel absolutely cooked at the end of a long day, wading through TikTok brain rot and more insanity from the Wi-Fi password community. One thing that helps me cope and regenerate some of my destroyed brain cells is a cup of tea from my friends over at Lion's Tea Exchange, the sponsor of today's show. Founded by my friend and fellow YouTuber Sydney Watson, this delicious tea is sourced from across the globe, from Nepal to Japan, but made in America and packaged meticulously by hand. I love the lemon ginseng tea to sip and unwind after a day of dealing with Delulu. If you too need something to bring you some peace in this increasingly insane world, go to the link on screen or in the description and check out Lion's Tea Exchange today. Plus, if you use the promo code BRAD, you can get 10% off your order. Check out Lion's Tea Exchange now. So up next, this kind and warm TikTok influencer has a hilarious and gentle-hearted suggestion for how to prepare food for your Trump-supporting family members this holiday season. Take a look. Ooh, pumpkin. Who doesn't like pumpkin pie? Okay, what is that? Cranberry sauce. I like that. Yeah, that's nice. Prepare that for your family. Socks? Why are there socks involved in this recipe? Oh, that's a weapon. That's violent. I hope this was a joke. I'm gonna go off the assumption that it's a joke. But it's still actually bad to joke about physically hurting people because they disagree with you. That's actually bad, okay? Now, in the most maddening and insufferable of all the TikTok videos we have to watch today, here's one from Mrs. Frazzle, the former teacher turned woke influencer who makes videos about how to gentle parent people. And in this case, how to gentle parent your family members that support Trump at Thanksgiving dinner. Take a listen and try not to lose too many brain cells.
Oh, I did not know it was silly goose o'clock, Aunt Helen.
Why are you speaking to your grown adult aunt like a toddler? Maybe this is why you got uninvited from Thanksgiving, most likely.
It's been 3 weeks and you're still breaking out that election cheer, huh?
As if liberals don't spend years after the election result melting down and complaining when it doesn't go their way. Come on now.
Wow. I'll catch a bubble. No, everyone here has to be inside with you. So please use your inside voice. Got it?
Telling a grown adult to catch a bubble and got it? You are the problem. Trump's rise only happened because of the cultural dominance of insufferable woke elites like this person, who look down on half the country and genuinely think that you must be a mental toddler if you dare disagree with their infinite wisdom. But the comments of this lady's videos are just full of adoring liberal Americans saying, oh yes, I'm going to do exactly this to my family who are so stupid and vote Republican. This is why we are where we are. Look in the mirror.
Oh, I remember. You were super scared of things changing. Well, I hope you, Aunt Helen, get everything you voted for.
Well, that's a pretty nasty sentiment. Of course, I think we all know what she means by that. But also, give me a break. The idea that people only vote differently from you because they're afraid of how much the world is changing. No, they actually have different opinions on complicated subject matters and areas that vastly impact people's life, from the border to the economy to foreign policy. It's not just, oh, there's the open-minded, tolerant liberals on one side and then the closed-minded, ignorant people who are scared of change on the other. You're coming off as insanely closed-minded and intellectually arrogant. But other than that, you're doing amazing.
Oh, big feeling. Do you want to go to the calm down corner together? You can take Penny. There's no kids in there. But touch your listening ears, please. It is time to think of other things to talk about. Do you need some help?
Not her acting like it's only Republicans who want to talk about politics at Thanksgiving. That is not true. We've all been around our share of insufferable woke liberals who can't help but inject politics into everything and make everything political. To be clear, people on both sides do this, and they should both stop. They should grow up and learn how to compartmentalize and leave certain topics off the table if people can't talk about them and get along. But it is not something that just Republicans do or just Democrats. And so to frame it like that, like she does in her video, is really disingenuous.
Well, the reason they're upset is because you keep talking about freedom, but you don't want freedom. You just want to feel like you're special and better. So think in your brain, what freedom do you want that doesn't involve taking it from someone else? That is so interesting that you remember it that way.
Freedom of speech, Second Amendment freedoms, economic freedoms, freedom to keep my own money, freedom to choose where my kids go to school, freedom to choose whether to join a union or not. I could go on and on and on, but many, many concerns about wanting more freedom have nothing to do with taking freedoms away from other people. You have a complete and total straw man vision of the other side politically, at least in this video. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut it off there for today. I can't handle any more Mrs. Frazzle in one sitting without incurring permanent brain damage. Hopefully these TikToks brought you a little bit of a laugh. Thankfully, most of the content I've been seeing out there has been decidedly less deranged than these videos. But of course, on the fringe corners of the internet, there will always be crazy people saying crazy things, and there will always be the Brad versus Everyone podcast to make fun of them for your viewing pleasure. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet, and do hit that like button before you go. And remember to comment with your thoughts. I do take the time to read the comments, and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Plus, if you leave your comment with a super chat or a super thanks, I'll definitely respond to it on Friday's show. Because remember, there won't be a show tomorrow. I'll be busy eating pie. And now we got to catch up on some media drama because a left-wing newscaster and host of the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, is coming under fire online after a clip she did on a recent podcast is going mega viral, where she explains how she woke up from Trump Derangement Syndrome. Take a listen to the original clip that's got her in hot water with extreme left and extreme right voices.
And so I'm like trying to get his bicycle like up the stairs. And all of a sudden this man stops me. His name's Jeff. And he's like, hey, let me help you out with that. And he starts helping me out. He stopped everything he was doing to help me out. And then Jeff and I became very close. You know, one of my neighbors who I really like, he was my favorite person in the entire building. And years go by. One day we're in an HOA meeting, homeowners association, and one of the people living in the building said something about Trump that was negative. I don't remember what it is. And Jeff whispers in my ear, oh, she's going to start trashing Trump. I'm out of here. And it hit me that he's a Trump supporter. We had never talked about politics before. And I'm like, so I got to know Jeff before I knew what his politics were. Incredibly kind guy. He helps everyone in this building with anything they might need. And so that woke me up to, wait a minute, not all Trump supporters are like dangerous, evil individuals. And yes, it was stupid that I thought that to begin with. Like, I'm embarrassed admitting that, but it's just how I believed. And that kind of was one of the moments where it's like a light bulb went off and something was telling me, you need to scratch beneath the surface a little more because you don't have a realistic view of what's going on here.
So I have to admit, I was really shocked that this clip caused any controversy online, because when I saw it, I was like, oh, wow, that's really a heartwarming, great story. Seems like she's learned a lot. She's got a more open mind. She's not, a Trump supporter now. She's not a Republican. She's still very much a leftist. But hey, she's come to have more intellectual humility and be more open to different perspectives. And I've seen Anna make quite the kind of slow journey on opening her mind on different things and becoming less of a hyper-tribal left-winger. And I think it's great. And I think this story is really heartwarming. It's what I always say, to look at people for how they treat others, not who they vote for in everyday life, and define them that way, and then get to know people who are different from you, to remind yourself that the other side, whether we're talking about Trump supporters in this case, or Democrats, Kamala voters, or even online lefties, are not all bad people, are not all the caricature you see of them depicted in your media. Lots of them are normal, kind-hearted people. And I think we should all remember that and not lose sight of that fact. So to me, I thought this was a great clip, and I just gave Anna props for how open and candid she was about how wrong she was and admitting it, which is something media figures very rarely do. They like to just kind of move on from their old incorrect takes or predictions or positions and never address them. So I give her a lot of credit for it. But some people online were very mad at her over this clip. Some right-wingers, like true fringe right-wing loony types like Laura Loomer, attacked her for calling her a grifter who's trying to cash in on the Trump moment now, but it was always so anti-Trump and lied and smeared about Trump supporters in a long, unhinged tweet thread that Laura Loomer did. And to this, I have a couple things to say. One is, if you want to have a successful movement or just kind of have any of your ideas win the day, you can't attack converts for the sin of having ever disagreed with you. This is something the woke people do a lot. They cancel people who agree with them because in the past they used to not agree with them. And what that does is it creates an incentive structure where you have nothing to gain by changing your mind because you'll still be irrevocably condemned for having once committed a thought crime. It's very much a woke approach to political coalitions. So if you do that, you are being self-destructive to your own movement's ability to win converts. You actually have to celebrate and uplift people who do see the light and who do change their mind. And also, to combat the accusations that Anna is some kind of grifter, I think she's made this evolution over time. It's been playing out over the last year or two slowly. It's not like she pivoted on a dime one day, and she's not changing her whole worldview. As she explains in this follow-up clip, she's changed a few individual positions, but she's still a left-winger. Her worldview hasn't changed. She's just become more open-minded. And I personally think that's a good thing. Take a listen.
I never made serious cash. I work at the Young Turks, okay?
Sorry.
Number two, what does she think is happening right now? Like, does she think that I'm trying to be accepted into the MAGA world and I'm trying to find a position or get named for a position in Trump's administration? I'm still, policy-wise, overwhelmingly left-wing. The only thing that's changed is that, well, first of all, we've always been critical of the Democratic Party. It's just that people are finally noticing that. But more importantly, yes, I changed my mind on like a handful of policies, including policies pertaining to crime, some extent on immigration policy, a few things that I've talked open and honestly about on this show. But economically speaking, I'm very much left wing and have been critical of the Democratic Party for their economic policies being too pro-corporate. And who am I making money off of? I'm here at the Young Turks. I've been at the Young Turks for 18 years. And by the way, this is a comment not only to Laura Loomer, but also to the left who engage in the purity stuff and don't like the fact that in the 18 years I've been here, yeah, I've changed my mind on a few issues. And they also don't like this. Look, I see ordinary Americans as civilians, okay? I see them as people who have the right to practice, their own beliefs, to have their own opinions. And I am done with demonizing people based on how they vote. How they vote or the reasons why they vote the way they do is complicated, right? So for me to demonize them and to be hateful and divisive toward them doesn't really make sense. I have changed the way that I talk about people, ordinary people, and the way that I approach ordinary people that I disagree with because I want to understand them. And I see them as my fellow Americans regardless of what their political ideology is. That's what has changed with me.
Now, the other share of criticism has come from far left types who've said, how dare you humanize Trump supporters? They're voting for fascism. Your friend Jeff is actually a Nazi. Just because he's nice to you and helps you carry a bike doesn't mean to change the fact that he has white privilege, blah, 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 blah. And to that I say, do you guys like losing? Because with this mindset, where you continue to demonize everyone who disagrees with you, you will continue to lose. But if the left or the Democratic Party was to actually show or embody the kind of introspection and open-mindedness that, for example, an Anna Kasparian has shown while remaining pro-choice, while remaining left-wing economically, while wanting socialized healthcare, increased minimum wage, all of that, but eschewing the divisive rhetoric, the doomsday alarmism, and the complete denunciation and just condemnation of half the country as irredeemably evil and bigoted, they would be a potent force electorally, just simply as a matter of political fact. That would be a real threat and a real, honestly, promising potential political movement like honestly, that's kind of what Bernie Sanders was originally, an economic left-winger who I disagree with on most of his policies, but he eschewed a lot of the identity politics stuff. He appealed to Trump supporters. He didn't condemn them. He said, yes, you're right about the system being rigged, but Trump isn't your guy. I'm your guy. And if he'd been allowed to get the Democratic nomination either time he ran for it, I think he would have been a formidable candidate. And I feel like that's the direction that Anna Kasparian is taking here. It's not a conservative grift. She's still working at the Young Turks, which is a left-wing network, which I'm sure doesn't pay her all that much. If she does a 180 on her whole worldview and becomes a Republican overnight and changes all her positions, like, for example, Tulsi Gabbard has, I mean, that is a little more suspect to me. But what she's doing right now, Anna Kasparian, I actually find very interesting, and I give her a lot of credit for it. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button while you're at it. And now we got to talk politics for a minute, because Trump's getting a lot of flack for his latest appointment, his latest presidential selection, but I actually think it is phenomenal.
Another hire, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He will be nominated to lead the National Institutes of Health. He is both a physician and an economist who has been a critic of COVID-era policies.
Public health has to return to its normal ways and apologize for the tremendous mistakes it made during the pandemic. A lot of people have lost confidence in public health as a consequence of its sort of embrace of policies that didn't work.
Trump has tapped the Stanford Medical School professor and economist Jay Bhattacharya to head the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, under his administration. Bhattacharya emerged as a huge COVID skeptic in terms of COVID mandates and lockdowns, and then was targeted pretty viciously by the scientific establishment and by big tech through censorship, suppression efforts, and just an attempt to discredit him. But a lot of his ideas have aged remarkably well, and I think he's an excellent selection. I've met Jay a couple times and am friendly with him, but that's certainly not why I'm supporting him as NIH director. One of the reasons I really like him as a selection is that, yes, he is an eminently qualified medical expert, a Stanford-trained doctor and professor with tons of published academic research and articles and long curriculum vitae. But he's also a trained economist, which I think is really cool and really important, because what happened during COVID was so many of our health officials, like Dr. Fauci, even when they were doing their best, even when they weren't getting up to some of the malicious shenanigans that I've spoken up in the past about, were only viewing their policies like lockdowns and mask mandates and school closures through the lens of health. They weren't considering, and even then, just public health in terms of COVID. They weren't considering all the other factors: mental health, unemployment, economic learning loss, and the lifetime economic impacts of that it will have, the school closure generation will have throughout their lifetimes. All these things. That's exactly what economists are trained to do, to weigh trade-offs, to look at opportunity costs and benefits across everything. And pairing that with medical expertise and medical knowledge gives you, I think, a much better vantage point from which to view public health policies in the true sense of considering both the public in all its forms and all of health, not just one disease and its impact. Here's a clip of Jay testifying before Congress to give you a sense of who he is and what he believes.
Public health bureaucrats operate more like dictators than scientists during the pandemic, sealing themselves off from credible outside criticism. Consider, for instance, the treatment of scientific dissidents outside the government who contradicted public health dogma. In the earliest days of the pandemic, public health bureaucrats organized a cover-up of the hypothesis that COVID emerged as a result of a laboratory leak, calling scientists who proposed the idea conspiracy theorists. Only recently have official bodies started to admit the hypothesis is plausible and maybe even true, and certainly not a conspiracy. Where do the scientists whose careers were destroyed advancing the idea go to get their reputations back? When Martin Kulldorff of Harvard University here today, Sunetra Gupta, a professor at Oxford University, and I proposed a focused protection alternative, not a herd immunity alternative, to lockdowns in October 2020, then NIH director Francis Collins labeled the three of us fringe epidemiologists and engaged a media campaign to take down our proposal, to which tens of thousands of doctors, epidemiologists, and scientists endorsed, including a Nobel Prize winner. Under the banner of combating misinformation, Government health agencies use their power to collaborate with social media companies to control the public conversation about science, COVID science, and policy. The pattern repeated itself throughout the pandemic, with science bureaucrats abusing their authority to create an illusion of scientific consensus in favor of destructive ideas when none existed.
Now, Jay became infamous because he participated in something called the Great Barrington Declaration, a group of skeptics of the establishment narrative, including medical experts and economists like Jay, who put out a resolution essentially during the pandemic early on, saying that lockdowns and massive societal mandates were a mistake, and that what we should do instead is look at the approach of, for example, Sweden, and protect the most vulnerable people, isolate them, and get them the materials they need to be safe, the elderly, the immunocompromised, but then allow everyone else to largely go about business as usual. And if they get infected, eventually a large amount of them will develop natural immunity, and you may have some form of herd immunity, a phenomenon we've seen with many diseases in the past. This declaration and this statement of principles was viciously attacked, including by lead doctors and scientists within the federal government, as fringe and as dangerous and radical. But while every piece of it hasn't worked out perfectly, it's aged pretty well. All things considered, when you think about how massively the lockdowns failed, everyone still got COVID 10 times over anyway, and how they caused massive mental health and economic harms that are just devastating and irreparable in so many ways. So as you can see, I find Jay Bhattacharya a incredibly remarkable candidate for this position, and I think he's a great selection. But his appointment did not go over well with the left. CNN medical analyst Jonathan Reiner tweeted, "Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is Trump's pick for director of NIH. During COVID, he advocated to let the virus spread widely so the US would get to herd immunity faster. His plan would have killed many more Americans. He also thought COVID might only kill 40,000 people. He was off by 1.2 million. So there's a lot wrong with this tweet. First, it's kind of a caricature of Bhattacharya's views and of the Great Barrington Declaration. They didn't just want everyone to get COVID, they wanted to protect the vulnerable, but then let the not vulnerable go about their lives. And yes, they did discuss the possibility of herd immunity, which I don't think really worked out because COVID kept rapidly evolving and there were new strains and other things, but you do get into some complicated science there that I can't really speak to. But I think it's totally false, or at least unknowable, to say his plan would have killed more Americans, because when you consider all the Americans who died from the second and third order effects of the lockdowns, things like skyrocketing drug overdoses due to mental health and depressive issues and all that, and the number of people who all got sick and died of COVID anyway, despite these draconian measures we took, I mean, you don't know that his approach would have led to a higher death count. If anything, it might have done the opposite. And so you can't actually make that claim with certainty at all. I also wanted to know about this claim that this doctor, the CNN medical analyst, alleges that Jay said only 20,000 people or only 40,000 people would die of COVID. Where does that come from? Did Jay really say that? Well, I tracked down the source for this claim, and guess what? Spoiler alert, that's not what Dr. Bhattacharya said. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed published at the very, very beginning of the pandemic, Jay Bhattacharya wrote about the uncertainty about what we didn't know about the virus and said it could end up being an epidemic that kills anywhere between 20,000 and 2 million. So he just made a vague statement when we didn't know much about the virus that said, this could go one of a few ways. It could end up being a relatively small virus that kills tens of thousands, or it could kill millions. He did not say this will only kill 40,000 people and then was proven wrong. That's not what happened. But of course, who's to let the truth get in the way of a partisan cheap shot? The left-wing political commentator Mehdi Hassan made a similar criticism of Trump's pick. Here, he tweeted, "A disaster for America and for public health, and a reward for a man who was consistently, demonstrably wrong about the pandemic and when it would end and how many would die." So Mehdi is somebody who I follow closely because I think he's a powerful speaker and good debater, and occasionally makes interesting points, but I consider him wrong about almost everything. But I do like to follow people from across the spectrum, even ones who disagree with me or whose views I find profoundly unsettling on some fronts. Here I just Totally disagree. I don't think that Jay Bhattacharya will be a disaster for public health. I think he's a very serious and competent guy who will do a great job. And maybe he was wrong about a few things during the pandemic, but I think the thrust of his analysis aged remarkably well. And everyone was wrong about at least something. Every expert under the sun got something wrong during the pandemic. There was so much uncertainty. And the people that Mehdi Hassan continues to valorize, like Dr. Anthony Fauci, got so many things wrong time and time again. And also, I mean, knowingly or not, I think perhaps knowingly in his case, misled and lied about a number of things as well. This has all been extensively documented about Dr. Fauci, but those people are still venerated and celebrated by the left. So even if Jay Bhattacharya had gotten a couple things wrong about the pandemic, which I'm not sure he did, but say he had, that wouldn't be disqualifying by their own analysis, because they still venerate the Dr. Fauci's and Robert Redfield's and other pandemic era expert members of the government who did get so much wrong. So yeah, I think he's an excellent selection, and Trump should pick more people like Jay Bhattacharya for his administration. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And now I'll wrap up today's show by reading a few of your comments from recent episodes. One person writes, "This is exactly why we have so many victims instead of victors now. If you haven't yet, please watch Am I Racist by the Daily Wire. It shows perfect examples of this divisiveness and the grifters who promote it." Yes, I've seen a lot of parts of it. I haven't sat down and watched the full thing. Maybe I should. But I love how Matt Walsh, who I've been critical of at times, but his film work is actually really interesting stuff. I love how he exposed Robin DiAngelo. We did an episode about that on Brad versus Everyone that performed remarkably well. That was a great piece of work there. It really was. Another person says, "Don't forget to leave a like. This level-headed channel needs to grow. I appreciate your content and share it often. Thanks." Well, thank you. And yes, guys, do like the video, do comment, yada, yada, yada. And we are growing pretty fast. So I really appreciate you all. And thanks for tuning in. Another person writes, "Hi, Brad. I'm in the UK and consider myself a former lefty, and I feel left behind, well, the left. There came a point when the left decided you have to think certain things and go along with stuff to still be considered a lefty. My brother is gay. I'm all for gay rights, but the whole trans thing could be solved by just saying there are trans men and trans women. They can have their own bathrooms, their own section in sports, and just be happy to be called a trans man or a woman. But no, they want the whole enchilada." That's one way of putting it. "And want to be recognized as a complete person when in actual fact they are not. They are pieces of a person sewn together." Okay, I don't know that I would put it exactly like that, but that's all right. That's it. That's all they would have to do, but it's too much for their feelings. There would be mass unalivings. Apparently, there'd be riots, all from the tolerant left. I love the show, by the way, and I'm a straight white male. Shakar, eh? A straight white male can enjoy a gay guy's content. It's almost like we don't live our lives in we. Yes, I'm Scottish and still say we instead of small. In fact, we have 46 different words for it, or that was genders. Can't remember. Okay, I see that's a joke. Boxes that we are assigned to. Yeah, we don't all live our world in these identity boxes, and I think that's excellent. And I think a lot of people agree with your broader sentiment that they were on board with gay rights, they were on board a lot of this stuff, but the left has lost the plot. And that's why we're witnessing a recalibration in our politics right now. Another person says, "Adding a super thanks just so my comment gets read. To comment that I have stopped watching when you get to the comments because you are now apparently only reading comments that are accompanied by financial contributions. I know nobody reads newspapers anymore, but back when they did, the letters to the editor section was one of my favorite parts of the paper. Having worked in a newspaper, I know that the editors would look for the most interesting comments to publish. I've never heard of a newspaper only publishing letters to the editor from readers who were paid subscribers." Well, a newspaper just is a totally different business model than a YouTube podcast, so that part I'll set aside. But no, I mean, you're right that some episodes I've only read the super chats, but that's not because I don't want to read the other comments. It's just because I have to read all the super chats, and there's so many of them, I don't have time to go through all of them. But I will make an effort to include more non-super chat comments going forward. And I might have to increase the threshold for getting your comment read to $5 or $10 or something, because a lot of people are just commenting like $1 or whatever, which is fine. I get it. But then you do end up with this problem. Another person commented, "Goebbels is long dead, but his principles of propaganda are alive and well. We saw it when our Russian relatives were telling Ukrainians that they bombed themselves. We saw it when Israel was told they killed their own people at Nova, and we see it again when we hear that Trump is a Nazi and will kill everyone. One common denominator is mainstream media." Yeah, I think the key is just discernment. Of course, everything is propaganda to some degree. I mean, most, or at least most media has some sort of agenda, and everyone has biases, but you should be viewing things across the spectrum and trying to decide for yourself what the truth really is, not just eating up whatever is served to you by a given media outlet. Another person says, here comes Brad crying because other people besides white men are hired. Do you want to explain why when two resumes with the same information, but one with a white sounding name and one with a black sounding name, led to the resume with the white name getting the interview 95% of the time? And I gave this comment the pin of shame. If you think that my views opposing the DEI movement come down to me complaining that people other than white men are getting hired, you're totally strawmanning me. You've totally failed to perceive my point. Of course, I support all people of all backgrounds being considered and hired for jobs based on their merit. I believe in equality of opportunity 100% full stop, and I oppose discrimination of any kind. But DEI goes far beyond non-discrimination and equal opportunity. In fact, in many ways, it involves discrimination in the opposite direction, or tokenizing kind of toxic, divisive politics and other things. It's not about me not wanting non-white men to get jobs. Like, come on, give me a break. And if what you were saying about two resumes being different with names, and then one 95% of the time, the white sounding one got a call for an interview and the other one didn't, if that was true, I would of course think that's horrible and oppose that. But I also, I wasn't able to verify that. If you want to email me the statistics, I'll take a look. But of course I'd be against that. I don't know why you would think otherwise. Like, come on, give me a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, people. Another person says, as someone whose parents are dead, it makes me sick to see a bloke sowing the seeds of separation in families just because of political disagreement. They'll regret rash decisions like that when their parents are no longer with them. Yeah, my heart goes out to you, first of all, but I completely agree. And I feel the same way about having an estranged parent. Honestly, like, these people are taking their family for granted and just casting them aside willy-nilly. I think it's awful advice. And people like Jeffrey Marsh should hang their heads in shame for trying to encourage people to go down these paths unnecessarily. Another person writes, Brad, do you ever watch any of Shoe on Head's YouTube content? I really like June. She is smart, witty, and not afraid to call either side out. But as a Democrat herself, she doesn't hold back on telling the Democratic Party exactly what major faults it has developed over the years. Yes, I do, and I disagree with Shoe on Head on almost everything, but I do find her content interesting, and I may even be reacting to one of her videos soon. Another person says, Brad, what a decent human you are. The creepy guy with the bad makeup is encouraging people to cut off their Trumpy relatives. This is so disturbing. I am Australian. This is bizarre. He is very unwell and needs support. Yes, he does. And if you're the praying type, say a prayer, light a candle for Jeffrey Marsh, for sure. All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you to today's sponsor, Lions Tea Exchange. Check it out in the description or the pinned comment. And make sure to subscribe, do hit that like button, yada, 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 comment, yada, yada, yada. And now we'll take a break for tomorrow. No episode because of Thanksgiving. And we'll meet back here on Friday.